You mentioned ADHD.
All the symptoms of ADHD are things that annoy teachers, require some of their attention.
True that. Welcome to the Patrick Coffin Show. I'm so delighted to bring back once again a guest I've interviewed many times. He was part of the Truth Over Fear Summit, which got me a ban from SchmooTube. And he and his wife, Ginger, have collaborated on many books on psychiatry and social change and education. And he's been the guest expert in north of 100 expert trials against companies like Eli Lilly. And I'm so glad to welcome back Dr. Peter Breggin. Peter, so great to see you.
Yes, it is. You're an old friend. I like to stay in better touch with you than we do. This
Yep,
is.
amen.
I'm so glad we're doing this.
And you have a birthday coming up. I won't ask you
Oh my
well,
God.
no, I will ask you. Peter, how old are you? How old will you be?
I will be 88.
Amazing.
What am I going to
That's
do
just
with that number?
I don't know how to segue from your question.
I'm
It's
in
so great
great
to see.
health.
Yeah.
I don't have a life-threatening illness, thank God.
hmm
And
You're still seeing patients?
yes, I still have a practice, and I still write books, and I still do legal consultations.
hmm
I do the
Great.
whole thing.
That's the key, right? Retirement is sort of the getting off the main train track
There's
line
there's
onto.
nothing even remotely near retirement going on in this
Mhm.
house.
Awesome.
Unless
Well, there's
this is
so.
retirement, getting to talk with you is,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's nice. Maybe this is part of retirement.
Mm-hmm.
Get to talk with friends, colleagues I
And you
admire.
don't have to worry about your short game on the
Yeah.
golf course. Let's. There's so many things I want to ask you, Peter, about the big picture of your work, starting with graduating from Harvard College and then Case Western. You immediately started building teams and staffing psychiatric clinics. Why did you get into this as opposed to any other medical sphere? What was it about psychiatry, which was very different in the 50s than it is today? What was the draw for you?
Well, I wasn't at all interested in medicine. I thought I was going to be a professor of history, American history and literature, which was my
Hmm.
special at Harvard. That in itself was an honors program. So I was really into being a scholar, American history and literature. And I thought maybe I'd go to law school with that and find some area perhaps of liberty or freedom, which was very important to me from my childhood on. And a friend invited me to go to the local state mental hospital as a volunteer. He said, Peter, you're studying too hard. Let's go. He and his brother, both of whom are gone now, he and his brother has started a volunteer program at a state mental hospital.
Hmm.
And I didn't know what to anticipate. I was not thinking about that kind of thing. I thought a lot about psychology, though. I read on my own mostly psychology books. And when I got there, it was quite an astonishing experience. It reminded me immediately of films I'd seen at the age of 9, going on 10, um, on Movie Tone News, which came
Hmm.
before the family movie. So we're waiting for the family movie, and Movie Tone News comes on with the first films of the liberation of a Nazi extermination camp. And so I got to see dead Jews, and Jews who were emaciated and hanging on barbed wire fences trying to hold themselves up, and others in heaps. And
Hmm.
I'm Jewish, but I did not have a religious upbringing. And that was the beginning of my thinking about, well, what is going on in the bigger world here? Then my Uncle Dutch came back, and he had liberated a concentration camp. At the time, I liked my Uncle Dutch. Lots of things changed my mind about him when I got to know him better. But he showed me personal photographs of a torture chamber, which he, of course, never should have done. I was probably going on 10. So I got quite a
Wow.
picture of what happens to Jews, what happens in concentration camps, extermination camps. And going to the mental hospital, there were so many things about it that reminded me of my uncle's descriptions of stench, the dilapidation, the terrible condition of the patients, the inmates. inmates. They really shouldn't have been called patients at the state mental hospital level. And then I got to lead the program, and I got two areas of very um, early experience. One was the horror of these back wards. I spent a lot of time in the so-called violent wards, the women's violent ward in particular. And since I got a set of keys as the leader of the program, one day they gave me a set of keys and I never returned them. So everybody thought Pete had a set of keys, and I did, and I could go anywhere in the hospital. I watched electroshock treatment, insulin coma treatment, where they give you an overdose of insulin, put you in a coma, quite near death. I mean, people died in insulin coma therapy. And it was already known it was damage in the brain. You could tell from animal and human autopsies. And I saw what it did. I understand perfectly what they were doing. I saw lobotomized patients. And there's nothing about treatment going on. It was strictly the destruction of enough brain function to make people submissive inmates in the institution. Mm-hmm. And I also got an idea because people were so eager to talk with me and the other volunteers. And they wanted to show some caring and trust back and forth. I would have to take my watch. I didn't have to. Nobody was threatening me. They would take my inexpensive watch and polish it and give it back to me. A couple of occasions, women came over to polish my shoes, took my shoes off. They wanted to do anything they could do to show we're so glad you're here. And the other students had, varying degrees of that kind of thing going on with them. And I never was attacked. I'm in the violent ward for 4 years, on and off. I walk through the men's violent wards. I'm always alone. I am not large, although I like to carry myself with presence. And never threatened at all. The worst thing ever happened, the scariest thing, was a very big man came up to me and looked down on me, literally, and said, "I smoke Lucky Strike," and then walked past me. I mean, that was literally what I remember.
Is the reason for them treating you that way because you didn't represent the guy with a needle or an ECT thing that you were going to hurt them? They knew that they could trust you and that you were there as a presence of kindness. Is that why they reciprocated, do you think?
I think something like that, yes. My deepest feelings were different than a lot of the volunteers even, and very different from everybody else who was working there. And that was there, but for the grace of God go I. Mm-hmm. I had no doubt that with sufficient stresses or sufficient deprivations that I would have trouble hanging on to my sanity. I knew that. I knew that I'd had a very fragile childhood, but I also knew that I had an incredible veneer. It was a kind of odd because I was class president many years, and I was, editor of the newspaper. I mean, I was a very successful youngster, but at the same time, and I think this is why I had many friends, and I felt like I was on an edge of some sort, and that I didn't feel superior to anybody. Mm-hmm. And I also had an idea of defending people very young. I mean, I had all these different ideas very young. I mean, and I was certainly well before adolescence. I was thinking when I grow up, I'm going to tell people how bad childhood is.
That's a cottage industry now. How your crappy childhood and your bad parents.
That was not really. It was more than that. I mean, it was much more than that. No, it was a really serious intent on my part to help people understand. Not to even talk about myself, but to talk about not how bad, quote, my childhood was.
Yeah.
How bad childhood was. It was
childhood itself.
It was a different thing than that, and I've done that. I've really talked a lot about child abuse and drugging of children. I mean, in retrospect, I've accomplished that first determination over the years. So I saw how much help we were giving, so then I'll speed this up. But the foundation's all there. I mean, I saw that the treatments were doing more harm than good. I saw that nobody could be sane in a facility like this, that it was crushing to the spirit, crushing to freedom, crushing to self-responsibility.
Hmm.
And I saw how eager everybody was, not everybody, how eager most people or many people were for personal contact with us as volunteers. They just really were so glad to see us. And so I told the superintendent that I'd met with one of the social workers. There was really a lovely man there, David, and he was willing to supervise a group of us volunteers. I picked out about a dozen of us,
Hmm.
and we would like to see our own patients every week, be like case aides. Well, he got very upset. He said I wasn't running the hospital. My first confrontation, very young man, college with power and authority, and the Psychoanalytic Institute of Boston. They said we'd hurt the patients. Those arrogant, elegant, uh, elite in the thinking they're really elite when they're not,
Hmm.
psychoanalysts. They never went into the state mental hospital. I never
Yeah.
saw any of them in there. And I got the program passed by actually quietly explaining that I was exploring other mental hospitals that were very interested in our program.
Hmm.
And one another one was. So we set the program up, and it was a success beyond anything we imagined. We got 12 of 15 patients out of the hospital, and only like 3 came back over a couple of year follow up. It was amazing. Got written up in all kinds of places. But it was kind of the end of that era when you could, in psychiatry, do different things. We had a communist psychiatry, a social psychiatry, a spiritual psychiatry, little niches, tiny little community psychiatry, while 90% was drugging psychiatry way back then. It always has been doing some
Hmm.
bad to the brain, shock on the brain, drug on the brain. Biological psychiatry was dominant, always oppressive,
Is it
always anti-spiritual.
is that piece still at the center of psychiatry
That's
today? The
all it is
biological piece?
now.
Yeah,
That's
all it
all
is
it
now.
is.
Throwing
All it
pills at
is.
people.
Yeah,
So
you can't
yeah,
talk to schizophrenics. They wouldn't
and
have a volunteer program like
right,
that.
and you're talking about the era before the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual,
Oh no,
and I
no,
wonder,
no, no,
yes,
no.
when did that? When did the DSM come online?
Well, wait a minute. Now that's interesting. Oh my gosh, I've got them all lined up there. And I can't tell you.
But
Yes, the
the
'60s. You may be
yeah,
right that it really hadn't come in yet. This is the '50s. I'm talking
yeah,
about the start of the heavy drugs. I
yeah,
think the
exactly.
DSM one and two were not that important. So it's probably the
Right.
'60s. Yeah.
Well, this is important because the phrasing of the DSM governs the kind of drugs that doctors get to give and
Right.
companies get to profit from.
Yep, and the people who write the DSM have been heavily under the control of the drug industry. Psychiatry now is the drug industry. It's just they're just totally involved with the drug industry, and there's no difference between the two right now. And it's just the money took over, and
In 19, I want to say 74 or thereabouts, Eli Lilly's marketing department hatched a sales and marketing promotion uh, project in which depression was defined as a chemical brain imbalance. And their new products are going to solve this, such that now, if you go to Google and say, what is depression? You're going to see ads for Prozac and SSRIs and Zoloft and Lexapro, et cetera, on the right hand side. So they were very successful in identifying depression as a biochemical brain problem as opposed to a problem of loss of hope. Is that a fair summary?
yes, the drug came out in the late 1988 and really got going in '89 and '90. And even before that, back in the mid '80s, they were buying doctors to
Mm-hmm.
promote in advance of the drug coming out the idea that this wonder drug was going to cure biochemical imbalances. There's no basis whatsoever. There's no science at all behind it. We've never identified a biochemical balance behind any psychiatric disorder.
Mm-hmm.
If we really did have data like that, the neurologists would be treating it. psychiatry is for all the made up diseases. But if you get MS or you have a brain tumor or something like that, you become a neurological patient. And by the way, psychiatrists tend to miss the real biological disorders. I mean, I had a patient develop a very obvious case of MS during our practice, our work together, and I referred her with that probable diagnosis, and she came back really angry because she knew she had MS. She'd read up on it when I pointed it out to her, and she'd been told it was all in her head, a biochemical imbalance. She was
Yeah.
depressed,
Hmm.
and unfortunately, the scans confirmed the MS. So doctors, the psychiatrists get so caught up with fake diseases, they don't even see the real ones a lot of the times when they come into
Hmm.
their office. Whereas if you know in advance, like I do, the odds are that you want to rule out a physical disease, a real disease, but there are no biochemical imbalances you can't see,
Hmm.
and then you maybe notice somebody is drooping in one of their eyes or
Yeah, yeah.
twitching or something else.
Something you can see under a microscope. Because
Yep.
so many conditions that appear in the diagnostic and statistical manual there's no objective physical markers to identify them.
Well,
They're
none of them.
yeah,
Not one. I mean, the only ones are the ones they take from the neurology textbook just to look real, like Alzheimer's.
yeah,
If you look at the broad categories of this so-called schizophrenia, broad categories, so-called bipolar disorder, broad categories of depression, anxiety, and ADHD, they're not diseases by anything we know.
Do you think that even diagnosing people with these scary sounding labels is part of their impeding their healing and their restoration?
Absolutely. And it's one of the things I do that transforms the lives of children in my practice is, little girl comes in and she's with her mother and father and they're kind of sad and they show me her neurological testing and she looks, she has ADHD and whatever else. And I look at the testing, and then I look at the little girl, and I said, the first thing that strikes me about you is you got the sweetest smile. I don't say anything about this in here. There's
Hmm.
some sort of grumpy person that was talking to you. And I see that you're actually amazingly well behaved under a stressful situation of coming to a strange doctor. And hey, let's just talk about this. Is actually, I'm going to tell you in front of your parents, this is a bunch of hooey, and I throw her on the floor or something.
Hmm.
And the child goes home, and later here, in the car or something like, she was singing for the first time. She used to sing all the time, or he was telling jokes for the first time. I try to help them understand immediately, and sometimes they understand really deeply. One when I told one youngster that, she said, "Oh, the other psychiatrist must hate you."
The answer to that is mostly yes.
To the extent they've heard of me.
Yeah.
There have been a lot of colleagues support my work over the years. We've had dozens of psychiatrists on our various boards over the years, but they can't go out front unless and do what I do, or they would, they get license attacked like I had. We wanted it, but they'll get, removed from positions and
Yeah.
they're not invited to the parties anymore. No more grants and stuff like that. So
Yes.
there's very few psychiatrists who will speak out, but they will because they feel they can do it and they want to do something. They will give me some kind of support in the background, even listing their names
Yeah.
on a committee or something.
You mentioned ADHD. I was diagnosed twice with ADHD, moderate to severe, and I've read a lot about the traits. I've made an amateur study of the four Greek classic temperaments. I'm a classic sanguine with a side order of melancholic, and that helped me so much in understanding my mode of being. And of course, people are complicated. You can't reduce or put people in boxes, but you have insights into what the behaviors that are diagnosed as ADHD, you think it's related to, am I remembering correctly, the father? What's your approach to what
Oh,
we
it's
call
just so
ADHD?
many different things because there's nothing, so it could be anything. It is actually, this is formally correct, especially if you go back to the earliest diagnostic manual, and I'm glad you're emphasizing it, the diagnostic manual. Um, the all the symptoms of ADHD are things that annoy teachers, require some of their attention, and it
True,
was
true
even
that.
yeah. Well, yeah. By the way, many media people tell me, and I feel you as a kind of a media person. You're really out
Hmm.
front. You're in public. You do radio and TV, and people with um, your qualities tell me, oh, they would have said I had ADHD. And the sad thing is that if you have been treated for ADHD, with the regular stimulant drugs, we now have follow-up studies from the 70s when they kids who were so quote mild that only the teachers identified them because that's what your parent doesn't think, oh, look at you shuffle your feet when you stand in line, and or
Hmm.
look at you can't keep your eyes focused on the board while I'm boring you to death. Or look at you talk out of turn.
Yeah,
Look
yeah.
at you're nudging Janie next to you. Um,
Mhm.
Concentrate on your work for God's sakes. I mean, parents they don't get into that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And, it's really true. So the list was tailored. They don't run around on the playground too much, stuff like that. So the whole list was tailored to going to the Department of Education, getting them to support this, going to the teachers' unions, going to the teachers in general, setting up programs supported by, in this case, it was Ciba Geigy way back, that had these drugs for a long time and only decided after 20 years. I mean, they'd known forever if you just give them to a bunch of kids stuck in a mental hospital, the kids will get quiet. They know
Hmm.
this, but they just never got around to it. And they realized they could do it for school children.
Yeah. Well,
And
I've been through the whole round of Ritalin, Adderall XR, Vyvanse, Focalin, Concerta, Strattera, multiple dosages. Only gave me bad side effects, and I'll never go back. I sort of felt like I got hooked into a magic pill thinking,
well,
and
that's what happens in the studies to the people. And unlike you, many of them end up very non functional. The statistics on if you've given a kid in the 70s just because the teachers thought he was a little hyperactive and they were being supported by NIMH, money,
mhm.
and at the local clinic, and they took him to the local clinic, they gave him the drugs, and the famous doctors followed him up. What the famous doctors had to admit in follow up studies over 20 years later was that they had less education, they had more hospitalizations, more imprisonment, they more mental illness of all kinds. They had become what we would call career mental patients. They were stuck in that role, and they were on multiple drugs, but not on Ritalin anymore. It wasn't a Ritalin that even done it to them. Ritalin gave them the side effects. Ritalin got them on the antipsychotics, the antidepressants, and so on for all
Yeah,
their adverse effects, including the mood stabilizers like lithium for their mania, which is also one of the many things. Because the wonderful thing for the drug companies about stimulants like Ritalin and Adderall and all of them is that they cause every psychiatric disorder known to man. They can cause depression, they can cause overstimulation, mania, they can cause insomnia, they can cause irritability and anger. I mean, it's the whole works. They're
yeah,
very bad for the brain. They stimulate multiple neurotransmitters, overstimulate. There was nothing wrong with the transmitters beforehand. Overstimulate multiple neurotransmitters, and they cause a lot of stuff. Now, this is what, if you look at who gets diagnosed with ADHD, by far and away, it's the youngest children in the class. It's the kids who might have been left in the previous class. They're young, they're immature. So if you're looking for something objective, that's the most common thing. But they are kids who have what is in the diagnosis. They have often some difficulty. They're just settling down into a classroom. Why is that? Well, we didn't have any classrooms for the first 2 million years of our evolution. We didn't have any classrooms. I mean, oh my gosh, I don't even know the answer to this. When the heck was the first classroom? It's got to be within just a few thousand years ago,
Yeah,
because we
probably even
only
yeah, sooner than that. I think it's post Middle Ages, where education separate from the home, separate from the mother and the father, by
that's
by a professional.
yeah. That'd be really interesting to study some more. I mean, it's interesting. I never got into that. So we're not used to classrooms. We're not used to being isolated all day from nature. We're not used to being isolated all day from the family. That's not what we grew up to be. In fact, we used to be 12 or 13. You might be out working. You might be apprenticing. Um, you're definitely, if you're in among the most populous people, the people out in the fields, and you're going to be farming as soon as you're able. You got a chore to farm, and this goes on up to your farming and stuff.
Yeah,
And
very.
this happens on many small farms today. So it's an artificial thing we're forcing kids to do. And so the most energetic, the kids, maybe the best farmers, maybe the best fighters, maybe the best thinkers, they don't fit in.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
needless to say, girls fit in more because that's how they're forced to live. And also, they developed to stay put with the family, take care of the children for millions of years while everybody else was out there doing nothing but playing the guys or hunting or whatever they were doing. Um, but so the women fit more biologically into the more sedentary kind of life. Though they did have to get up and march, with the clan when they moved, or the
hmm
pre-clan with the just extended family. So you know, the women didn't get diagnosed much at all. So, what do girls do when they're being themselves in classrooms? Well, Ginger tells me about thinking about getting married and thinking about the dresses she would wear and thinking about poetry and wishing she could go off in the corner and read like she loves to do still today in the evenings. Just can't wait to get that book in her hands. Um, And so the best they could get the girls with was an attention. So that became a big deal. Daydreaming,
yeah,
daydreaming. So it's nothing. Now, if you've also been abused as a child, or you're very depressed as a child, or you've gone through a divorce as a child, then you've got anxiety or depression or something else really difficult, or your parents are physically ill or disturbed and distressed. Then you've got a lot of more serious stuff, but they'll also throw in ADHD just so they can start you right away on the Ritalin.
right, right. This is very interesting what you just said about depression and anxiety as an adaptive response to something hurtful or scary or something you didn't choose. Do you think, as a psychiatrist, based on your many years of helping people, that there's a kind of catastrophization surrounding depression, that it really does not have to be the Marianas Trench of despair, that what someone else is going to label you as depressed or even or seriously depressed is a normal response to a crappy situation, that it's not an extra curse to be depressed. You're not helpless or hopeless. It's, do you see what I'm getting at?
Oh, do I ever? Yeah, it's been a blessing for me to treat many people of college age because I'm in Ithaca. In Ithaca, Cornell is here, and the word got around to one of the churches, in fact, how much I helped somebody, and then more people came. So I've gotten to treat a number of Christians, and including among them some foreign students. And what I routinely say to these youngsters in more detail than I would say on the air, because
Hmm.
people are very opportunistic and wanting to attack me or Ginger on occasion. Mostly we get tons of love. I can't tell you all the love we keep getting. I think it started with Malone's $25 million lawsuit, which the judge, of course, eventually threw out of court. But I mean, just all this love. But we do get some attacks too. But what I tell these young people is, listen, I'm sure you think that I've just been this most intact guy. You tell me I understand what you're saying, and you maybe you've read a little about me. And when I was your age, I was more depressed than you. In fact, it's hard to be a really intelligent person without developing a lot of anxiety when you're young about what is this world. The world's very confusing nowadays. There's lots of threats in it that mothers and fathers are usually working like yours, and so you don't have that constant support and all. But I had some of those things way back when I was young. And I can tell you, I could have killed myself. And they get this look on their face because they've already liked me. I'm often the first therapist who ever talked to them like a parent, like more like a loving parent.
Yeah, yeah.
More like what they always wanted.
Right. And just
And
empathy they've been crying for all this time.
openness, empathy, caring, and just the whole works of just being a person with them. And I'll say, in 1 minute, you could end all that and never be here anymore. On the other hand, knowing you already and how easily you understand everything I'm saying, how easily we communicate, you're somebody who could have a very, very wonderful life. And that's what I'm going to help you do. Just promise me you won't do yourself in the next week. That's all.
Hmm.
I can do that, Doc.
And
And
and all it takes is 7 days for that turnaround, right?
sometimes
In some cases.
some children, young people especially, the turnaround is the first time they meet me because they get hope.
Yeah,
They
that's
get
there it
hope.
is. Mhm.
And with some of the students that are here at Cornell, they either already have a parent staying with them. The foreign parents come over and they stay because their kids are in trouble. Um, but I get the parents involved if the child's having a lot of trouble, like they're coming right out of the hospital, loaded up on drugs.
Mhm.
And we sit together and I tell them, listen, I think the most important thing I can do for your son is to just improve the quality of your lives together.
I want to send people to where they can find you. Breggin.com is the best hub. Your Substack, Peter and Ginger Substack, you can find you there.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
the Breggin.com is also a tremendous website that we've had for a long time and built and built. It has psychiatry sections. It has sections on the World Health Organization and the UN. It has sections on Robert Malone because he, tried to hurt us in such a
Yeah.
very bad way, failed completely
Mhm.
on it. You never know; he might try again. You don't know what these people do. Um, the You can really find your way around. You can find our books on that.
Yep.
But the best way to get the book, which is still the best deep dive, you can get it if you're in America only. You can get it from us, and that's on wearetheprey.com. But if you're anywhere other than in America, you go to Amazon or any other place and you can get it. It's got all the shape, very inexpensive ebook, and it's also a book that you can listen to. So we cover the water.
I just interviewed Dr. Steve Mosier on his book, The Devil in Communist China. It's all there. The Bible says that.
Oh, he's
Yes.
Moshe's got a new book.
Yeah,
He's terrific.
yeah, amazing. A good
Oh,
guest
good,
for you,
good,
by the
good.
way. But look,
Yeah. You
Breggin.com
send
is.
him an
Mhm.
introduction.
I will.
Would you send him an
I'll
intro?
hook you up like a fish.
Tell him
Mhm.
that I write about him a lot in my new book.
Oh,
It's
terrific.
coming
Okay,
out.
good.
That's a
Well,
new book
I'll have you
coming out.
back when that book comes out. Well,
Not before. You're
we'll,
going to make your
look,
friend wait.
we'll book you for
Well, I
tomorrow.
better rush the book then if I'm going to see you again.
Okay, awesome. Well, people can find you at Breggin.com. They can find me on Twitter at Coffin Media, on Instagram at Real Patrick Coffin. I'm also on Facebook. So keep in touch with both of us. Thanks for your work. I love you, Peter. Love to Ginger and Mom.
Yeah,
And,
Ginger and I love you, Patrick. Keep on building a great life for yourself and a great profession.
Amen.
You're so needed in the world.
Preach it. Your lips to God's ears. Thanks again, friend.
Thank you.
This is the Patrick Coffin Show. Be a saint. What else is there?